Hello, I'm David D. Cosmo. Welcome to ECTV Live. I'm joined as usual by my co-host Rusty Fender.
Hey, good to see you, David.
Welcome. Hey, last week we talked all about the big doings over the Labor Day weekend here in Scranton with La Festa Italiana. As it happens, Scranton's a great place to come for Labor Day, not only because of La Festa, but because of another big event that's taking place at the same time, and that is Railfest. And here to talk with us about that is Debbie Conway, who is the superintendent of the Steamtown National Historical Park. Debbie, welcome.
Welcome, thank you.
It's the weekend where everybody has a camera strapped to their neck. This is the weekend.
Yes,
surely.
Busy weekend in town,
yes,
for sure.
It is, and let me ask you, is there a correlation between La Festa and Railfest? Do you interchange your audience, as it were?
Oh, sure, definitely. Especially, I think you really find some of the Railfest folks coming up to La Festa for some of the food, to partake of some of the food. We do actually have a shuttle that runs between the two events on both Saturday and Sunday. So if you're down at Steamtown and you are hungry, you can hop on one of the shuttle buses. It'll bring you up to La Festa. You can grab your food and check out what's happening up in the Courthouse Square area, and then ride back down to Railfest.
Okay. Now, Railfest and La Festa have been basically on the same days for some time now, but Railfest is unique in a couple different ways. First of all, the park is there all year long, so people can come and they can see the trains and the exhibits and all the artifacts from over the years of the railroads and such. What's unique about Railfest then?
Well, Railfest is we try to bring in visiting rail equipment to the extent we can. We also bring in a whole variety of other special railroad-related activities. So we're going to have 3 model railroad groups having displays this weekend. We have the Erie dining cars are going to be one of our food vendors on Sunday.
The Phoebe Snow era.
Yep,
absolutely.
We actually have a Phoebe Snow that's walking around the ground,
that
so you can get your picture taken with Phoebe Snow. Just anything that you can think of related to railroading. You can ride a small live steam engine, I think it's 1/8 scale steam engine. We're going to have the Museum of Industrial History this year is bringing in model steam engines, the little model engines, and they'll be demonstrating those throughout the day in one area of the park. So anything related to sort of steam and railroading. And this year we're tying in with the 250th of the anthracite coal in the area.
Let's back up because that ties in with Phoebe Snow. And for those that don't remember the character, a young woman dressed entirely in white, promoting for the railroads the idea that anthracite coal burned in those steam engines didn't make the same kind of soot to fly through the air and to get onto your clothing.
Right.
Correct.
So the anthracite tie-in certainly fits perfectly with the character Phoebe Snow.
Certainly. So we're having a special exhibit over in our office storage building regarding the anthracite history. So there's all kinds of things going on over the 2 days of Railfest.
This is the area because the railroads own the mines and the mines own the railroads. It is that complete circle.
Exactly. Coal mining and railroading kind of go hand in hand, especially in this area. So.
Sure. Well, you mentioned you're going to bring in some special exhibits when you can. Are you talking about rolling stock, actually railroad cars of such that come in?
Certainly. This year we're a little light on railroad cars, I admit that, but part of that is the changes in the railroads that have to bring those cars to us. Like Norfolk Southern, for example, it used to be that Canadian Pacific used to bring those cars in for us for free. Now they're charging. So we're having a little bit more trouble getting visiting equipment, but we do have a couple pieces of unusual equipment that'll be coming. One is Delaware-Lackawanna Railroad. The president, David Monteverdi, he's going to let us display his personal car, the Erie No. 2. So you'll be able to take a peek inside that. So that's one that we just found out is coming this last week.
Love a personal railroad. I've got one, but it's a Lionel. It's only this big.
You know the Reading and Northern too. The owner of that has his own car. He parks in Pittston Junction, not too far from my house. It's it's amazing the way that there's only basically now 3 big railroads. In the old days there were 10 in one area. Now it's the Burlington Northern Santa Fe, the Norfolk Southern and CSX, the old chassis system. And it's like, the more that these corporations morph into one mega Fortune 100 company, the less they're going to do for the small guy.
So if you want to bring in a car, you've got to actually run that car over somebody else's railroad line.
Correct, exactly.
So it's making it a little bit of a challenge.
Maybe interrupt their schedule
Exactly.
Exactly.
So one of the things that we've been trying to do is been trying to bring in some different types of activities. So two things that we're doing this year that are a little different is we're doing a special train excursion on Saturday where you can do two train rides in one trip, basically. You would take our trip that goes from Steamtown to Moscow,
Right.
and then we're going to bus folks from Moscow over to Lackawaxen where you'll get on the Sturbridge line, and you would take the Sturbridge line from Lackawaxen over to Honesdale, and then we'll pick you back up by bus in Honesdale and bring you back to
That's going to be
Steamtown.
incredible.
Yeah.
It's a unique experience, something we've never tried. We're hoping it will be a big success, and I think so far the numbers are showing that people like that idea.
And that's the old Erie line that went to Lackawaxen where they exchanged coal from the Avoca Yard, not too far from where I live now in the Duryea Old Forge area. And that also parallels not only the Lackawaxen River, but the D&H Canal up through
Yes,
Lackawaxen.
yes.
That is the most scenic spot you could ever get on
Now,
the old Erie.
They used to have actually a sample of the canal that was semi-operational.
They did. It's still there. They have the third or fourth lock, and they
Okay.
fill that, and it used to drop or raise depending
They
upon.
did have a barge at one
Yes,
time.
they
though.
did.
You could go at a certain distance. Now,
Truly
the Sturbridge Lion, again, local history, regional history. If I recall, the first
Correct.
engine in the
the
United States
first engine, correct.
Yes.
was the Sturbridge Lion,
That's
which
correct.
ran in that area.
That is correct.
Exactly. So really rich trip that you can try, and something new that we're trying to try to, again, knowing that we don't have a lot of visiting equipment and the challenges we're having getting visiting equipment, we're trying to do different things. The other thing that we're doing, last year we did a night photo shoot that was very successful. This year we're trying an early morning photo shoot on Sunday morning. Be a special ticket price that you would take to ride a train that's going to stop at several key locations, and we'll have a sort of a CNJ passenger train that will be the object of the photo opportunities.
Also a big line in this area in
Yes.
conjunction with the D&H
Yes.
was the Central
Yeah.
of New Jersey, which
Yep.
unfortunately went out during the Agnes flood when all the railroads, all their bridges and structures were washed away. Trucking was on the increase. They could not afford to rebuild. That's the
Well,
sad part about the railroads.
Trust me, we've been holding our breath the last couple weeks because the Delaware Lackawanna did receive quite a bit of damage
I
in the
know.
recent flood.
know
So
it.
we need those
I
lines
know.
repaired for these trips this coming weekend. And it looks like things are going smoothly on that front. But yes, I mean, I've had people say it reminds them of some of the
It does.
flooding that happened back in the
Absolutely. When they washed out, they could never recover after 72, and in 73 they went bankrupt. Another fallen flag, as they say in the
Yep.
business. Yeah.
Yep. And then the other thing we're doing that I really want to promote is this Friday night at 7:30 in our theater. We're going to have a free concert to kind of kick off RailFest. David Stone, who is the Johnny Cash Experience, will do a concert for us and the visiting public. So we hope folks will turn out and enjoy the music and a few light refreshments afterwards, and that'll help us kick off the whole weekend of activities.
Boy, here again with the tie-in with La Festa, going to be plenty of entertainment available throughout the area here in
Shouldn't
Scranton.
be bored this weekend in Scranton, that's
Big
for sure.
weekend not to be laboring on this Labor Day weekend, huh?
Yeah. Now there's something that I want to make sure we point out to the viewers because this is an interesting change. Recently, Steamtown dropped its admission fee. So you could
Correct.
just really go in any time you wanted. Now, there was still a fee if you took advantage of any of the excursions that they ran, because obviously there's a lot more expense involved in taking a locomotive out on a run.
Right.
For RailFest, there is an admission fee, but perhaps you can explain that and how that ties
Sure.
in with everything.
Sure. So even though we don't have the normal admission, we are charging during RailFest because, again, this is a very expensive event to put on. But what we've done is instead of in past years, you would have paid $7 admission to get in, and then if you wanted to ride the short yard shuttles or the caboose hops, you would pay another $5. So you'd
Right.
have a fee of $12 to do, most of the activities. The big excursions still had
Right.
an additional cost, but you would pay $12. Right now, we're charging $10 a day, or you can get a $15 two-day pass to get in both days of RailFest for adults. And then that's $7 for kids and $10 for the two-day pass for children 6 to 15 years of age, and under 5 is free.
Okay. And then after RailFest is over, you'll go back to the...
Everything's free except for the excursions and the yard shuttles, which
Okay.
again, that's the normal structure.
I
that we
can't
have.
believe the way that this park has become what it is. I mean, I was one of the speakers when it opened, 4th of July weekend, and you weren't here at the time. I think Kip Hagan.
Yep.
I think Kip was there. And I was one of the speakers because I'm one of the biggest rail fans probably on the East Coast. and to see, what they had, this little tiny exhibit in Bellows Falls, Vermont, which garnered millions of visitors a year, to what you have now. Luckily, the area had the roundhouse on site.
Yes.
There were a lot of structures in place from the locomotive shops of the DL&W.
Which is
so
very
this
important
was
for our
incredible
operation.
how this has come into a world-class national historic site. It's
Not,
amazing.
not without controversy, because of course
Not without a lot of
the
controversy.
federal involvement in
That's right.
funding to get it here. You can debate back and forth, but now it has become a success, and I think one of the measurements of that success may be, and I get over there fairly often, I enjoy the Lackawanna Trolley Museum, which is
Yes.
virtually right next
Yes.
door. And one of the things you'll notice in the parking lot is the license plates from out of state.
Exactly.
Really a tremendous selection, and I don't mean just from New York or New Jersey.
No, you're correct. And honestly, that special excursion that I mentioned with the Sturbridge line, I've been seeing the ticket sales coming in on that, kind of watching that closely since it's a new endeavor. I'd like to see how it's going. And we've had somebody from the state of Oregon. There's folks from Canada that have bought tickets for
Amazing.
that trip. And obviously New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania around here, but there is some Ohio. They're coming for quite a distance to
Yeah.
You know,
take
it
this
is
trip.
the adage, too. You don't see things in your own backyard. I worked for 8 years at the World Trade Center in New York City, never been to the top of it. So, people from New York and New Jersey never go to the Empire State Building. It's always someone who'll travel 3,000 miles to see, like, the big boy,
Yeah.
which
Yep,
is like probably
exactly.
the most photo opportunity at the park.
Yes, it
the
is
big
one
boy.
of
Which
our-
is
Yeah,
the
no doubt.
largest
Most
steam
visited
engine ever
engine.
made.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's correct.
And the
People love
heaviest,
to
I
visit.
guess.
Absolutely.
Yes. So yeah, we're getting a lot of folks this weekend from quite a distance, and I think we'll have some great activities for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, with that kind of influx of people getting a look at Steamtown, I think they would probably have the opportunity to get a look at Scranton or northeastern Pennsylvania generally. Then you got to wonder if they won't come back.
Yes. Yes. Again, we get a lot of repeat visitation, and we have pretty significant economic impact that we.
I was just going to ask you about that. Have you ever done a survey to see what? And I realize that's nothing you can measure precisely.
Exactly, but the National Park Service does do an analysis of the economic impact of each national park, and you're going to be testing my memory banks here, but I think that for the last year we were somewhere around $7 or $8 million economic impact for the city of Scranton because of the visitation that we bring in. You figure that everybody comes in, they either stay overnight in a hotel, they buy food in the restaurants, they do a little shopping.
Most of it will occur this weekend.
Right. Well, they calculate that out
40%
over
of
the
it.
course of the year and figure out roughly what the economic impact is. So we're somewhere between 7 and 8 million, I believe, in economic impact.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is, because it makes it an industry in terms
Right.
of productivity for the area. How about numbers of people coming? Now, can you measure that now when you don't have the
Sure, it's a
fees?
little bit trickier for us. It's a little bit not as precise. When we had, giving out wristbands every day, we knew exactly how many wristbands we
Right.
handed out. So now we do still keep count. And our visitation has been up a little bit this year from last year, and I think that's attributed to the fact that we got rid of the entrance fee. So we're up about 3 or 4%, somewhere along the lines there. And so we're pushing about 100,000 visitors a year.
It would be interesting now, and following up on a point that you made, and the New Yorker not seeing the Empire State Building, it would be interesting to see the number of local people.
Yeah, wouldn't that be
are-
great?
You can measure
You're
the
right.
license plates I saw,
You're right.
but I can't measure if somebody's come from
Right.
Dutch Hollow.
That's right. That's
to
right.
come in to see the
No,
place.
exactly. Well, and I do know that just wearing the uniform and going out places, people are like, well, where do you work? And I'm like, Steamtown, down with the trains. And, again, it's been nice to be able to say, hey, we're a cheap date. Come on down, You
Real
can bring your
cheap date.
girlfriend or your wife or whatever if you
Or
haven't
both
been there.
if you
Yeah. Yeah, you could. It is hard to know how much we're doing with the local community, but we do know that we have regulars, especially, I know you were talking about your grandkids.
Yeah.
People that, come in when they're babysitting the grandkids, and once a week they're there to come and see what the trains. So
Sure.
We get a lot of repeats too.
Let's go over the schedule for the events. Now, Railfest itself is on September 1st and the 2nd. So
Yep,
you're
Saturday and
talking,
Sunday.
talking Saturday and Sunday, Labor Day weekend. Maybe I should ask about that as well. Your Labor Day itself, La Festa is still on. Have you considered just morphing it totally with the dates?
Well, we have a little bit, and again, when we used to get a little bit more visiting equipment, Monday was the day the equipment started to move back out, and so there was
okay.
still a lot of activity going on. So we have talked about that. At this point, it is just Saturday and Sunday. We're open 9 to 6 both of those days. We've extended our closing hours a little bit. Usually we're 9 to 5, but we've extended into the evening a little bit till 6 o'clock because we have a lot of activities going on, a lot of musical performances. We're going to have kids' activities, magicians, and different activities for the kids throughout the park. So there'll be a lot going on for the
Well,
full
didn't
day.
you say the first concert is Friday night?
First concert's Friday night at 7:30.
So I guess technically it kind of has
Yep.
expanded to that direction.
Yes.
That's totally free.
Yeah, the Friday night concert in our theater. Yep.
And what time will that begin?
7:30. No tickets necessary. We should be able to.
I don't
walk right in.
I don't think the Department of Labor could make it any easier for folks to visit national parks by deregulating just the cheap fees. Barbara and I make it this year we're going to, as I said, Agate Fossil Beds in Geary, Nebraska, Chimney Rock, Scottsbluff. We do all the really romantic spots. Just think about that. And then we're staying in Estes Park, Colorado, and then the Stanley Hotel in the Rocky Mountains National Park. But the smaller ones, like we were there 4 years ago to Craters of the Moon, that's always been free in Idaho. The smaller parks have always been free. I mean, you can't complain about what it costs to see nature at
and
its
remember,
finest.
those parks that still do have an admission, if you're over 60, you can get the National Senior Pass. I've had it for years. I got it when it was $10.
Yeah, this is my year.
Now it's 40, I
Now it's
believe?
40. I think
actually
it's 50,
I
isn't
thought
it?
it was more like 80, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Perhaps, but in any case, if you have that, it's a one-time purchase, and
And
then
it's
you
good
can
for
get
the rest of your life.
Yeah,
This
the rest
is
of your
my
life.
year, and they had it
And-
last year, and I wasn't old enough. This is my year for it.
And not only you, but basically your
Anybody in your
spouse
car.
and 2 other people
Yep.
Right.
with you, to any
What a
park that
deal.
has an admission fee,
What a
you can get
deal.
it for free. So, it was a fantastic deal before, but still, if you get a chance to travel, and you enjoy visiting national parks where you can see some really unique things, and I'm thinking of, out west of the canyons,
Grand
Grand
Canyon.
Canyon,
Bryce Canyon,
Yellowstone,
and-
Bryce Canyon,
yep,
with Zion. And at the most, it was for Yellow. We went to Yellowstone and Yosemite a few years back. It was $10 for a car. Like this is a bargain even at a fee price. $10.
I think they're up to about $20.
They
a car
probably
at
are
this
now. I'm
point,
sure
but-
they went up a little bit.
But again, it's part of the fee increase was because we really were probably one of the best deals in town. When you could get a lifetime pass and it costs you less than it costs you to go to a movie once.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It really was maybe a little.
Hey, until the early 80s, I'm old enough to remember when they were free. National
Right.
parks were always free, and people say, "You're kidding me." So they were free up until the early 1980s when tens of thousands became several millions.
Right.
And to maintain this, to maintain Yellowstone and Yosemite. But they were free since their inception back in the Teddy Roosevelt days.
Yeah. Well, talk about maintaining a park in the case of your Steamtown with the kind of equipment you got to deal with. You must rely on a lot of volunteers as well.
Oh, we have an immense volunteer pool, and we're always looking for more. We could not run our excursions and any of our train trips without volunteers. Usually we have a few members of staff on there, but sometimes we have entire crews that are all volunteer based. And these are folks that have gone through extensive training to be certified as trainmen, conductors, engineers, and we just couldn't operate without them. We love them to death. They are so important to our operation.
Sure. And you are always looking for.
We certainly are. In
more.
fact, if people want to get into train and engine service, we usually have an orientation twice a year, one in May and one in November. So one will be coming up shortly if you're interested to kind of go to the orientation, find out what it's all about, and then you'll be ready to go to the training, which happens during the winter in preparation for next
It's
year.
become a niche industry too. I remember this is at least 15 years ago when they were rebuilding some of the locomotives. They had an entire team of technicians from Poland. You'll
Yes.
remember that came in because I took a private tour of the roundhouse, and these are the only folks who could operate and weld on the boilers were from Warsaw, Poland.
Well,
I mean, this is bigger than just the Scranton regional area. This is a massive production.
But we got to remember too that Europe still. Train travel
Absolutely.
in Europe
It's
is still
very
a
heavily.
very
Absolutely.
practical reality,
Yes.
and in many
Absolutely.
cases, steam
The only-
is
absolutely.
still the steam and electric are
Correct.
I was in Switzerland a couple times, and I mean the rail service there is just fantastic.
Absolutely. That's all electric there.
that they, it'd be nice, but how do you bring in something, an exhibit from from another country?
Yeah.
That's a little
That
rough.
gets
one.
even trickier, yes, definitely.
Yeah. Let's get back to the schedule now.
Sure thing.
Saturday, you start with 9, did you
Yep,
say?
9 a.m. and then we'll kick off Railfest with our opening ceremony at 10, which will include naming our Grand Marshal. We'll also, the Lackawanna Historical Society names their Alan Sweeney Award winner for the year during that ceremony. We recognize some of our partners and other folks during that ceremony, and that's kind of our kickoff for the event, and then all the activities start right after that.
And I guess this is a kind of a situation where you're, rather than having event 1 here and event 2 here, you kind of go in and wander at your own.
Sure thing. We actually, and this is still the draft schedule, but we'll have a schedule for each day of the event that is just packed full of activities, different things happening in each time slot. There might be multiple things happening, like you'll see there's 3 or 4 things happening at 1 o'clock, so you can pick and choose whether you want to go, and in this case, listen to Grace's Downfall in the Locomotive Shop, which is a new band that's doing an hour-long presentation for us this year.
The band's going to be in the Locomotive Shop?
Yep.
It's
Yep.
pretty good acoustics in there.
Yeah, we expanded our number of stages, I guess you could say. So we're going to have a stage in the Locomotive Shop, and we have several sort of rock bands and different types of music coming in that's going to try that out on the Locomotive Shop stage, while we have other music going on
That's
in
a
the
good
core
idea.
complex.
Gosh, the price is certainly right for all this, isn't
Yeah,
it?
It is a good idea because there might be some areas you might normally miss in your excursion, but the band's going to bring
We'll
you.
call it to it. That's right.
Yep. We have activities spread out through the entire park, so you'll get an opportunity to walk into areas that normally you either need to have a ranger with, or maybe you don't normally get to see. So great opportunity to see behind the scenes a little bit.
Where are these various bands and these various walk-around artists, where are they coming from?
Well, several of the new bands are coming here locally. We worked out a partnership with somebody in the local music industry. So we have several groups. We have American Buffalo Ghost. We have, as I mentioned, the Grace's Downfall. There's a group called Sweetness. I think the Boastfuls, and Steve Werner, who does like handpan. Over the course of the weekend, all of these different groups are going to perform for us. And they're actually, what's really great is they're donating their time to us free of charge.
Oh, that's great.
wonderful.
Yeah,
And
which is
these
great.
are various formats as far
yes.
as the presentations?
Yes, very different formats. So some folk, some rock, the handpan. I'm not exactly sure how I would categorize that, but it's sort of a folky kind of thing. So a lot of different formats, and something for us to kind of try out and experiment what works.
And walk-around artists as well.
We don't have too many walking around artists except the magicians and who does balloon artistry and things like that. They'll be working the crowd. Phoebe Snow will work the crowd. We have a hobo that will be going around. You can get your picture taken with the hobo, things like that.
Yeah, and that way, I know one of the very popular exhibits you had there in the past was the hobo exhibit. Because again, with this being a rail center, back in the days of the Depression, you also had hobo centers as well.
That's right.
Around here.
Certainly.
Called
certainly.
the Jungles, which one wasn't too far from here, which we covered on another program, as we remember.
Sure, and I guess in essence that was the homeless before they became known as the homeless.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, they were the transients who went from place to place and weren't bothered, and were always one step ahead of the railroad bulls,
Police, yep.
as they were called back in the early 1900s. And yeah, and then they became homeless camps, and then the jungles turned into just places of crime, and then, as usually big events like that normally do.
We're going to do a quick review on the festival, but I'm going to hit you with this question because
Sure.
I do every time you visit us. You have the exhibit of the old train that ran at Naog Park that wound up in a junkyard one time in
Yes.
Florida, was resurrected by a good Samaritan, given to the city. They put it back up at Naog Park, and I don't know whether the rails didn't go around right or whatever, but it was not run. Or maybe it was because it wasn't a concession run by the concessionaire that had
right.
the other rides.
Right.
I don't know, and I won't touch that. But the train itself is now an exhibit in your
Yes, it is.
Your Steamtown, and my grandson loves to sit in it. But I would like to see it running
Running.
again on rails right there at Steamtown.
No, we have definitely explored that, and as you mentioned, amusement rides, that's one of the little hiccups there, is we have to figure out if because I think that would be licensed as an amusement ride, and we have some
Yes,
hoops
it
that
would.
we would
That's
have
right.
to jump through
That's
on
right.
that front, which is not an area
Plus
that we are
massive
normally in the
insurance
business of doing.
undertaking for that.
Exactly.
That's the problem. That's what what put Rocky Glen and Nayog Park and San Sui out. Wasn't the lack of folks, it was the insurance.
Just want the train.
Well,
Yeah.
and then the other thing is making sure we have a nice, safe area for it to operate. So we have a couple ideas.
Well, you
where
do
it
have
could fit, but-
space.
Yes.
There's space
Yeah,
available.
you
Well,
bet.
amazingly, we're a big area, but a lot of it's taken up by big railroad tracks. So we have to
Yeah.
find a nice,
Yeah.
safe area to run something like that. But
Okay, but
we
you,
have talked
but you
about it.
haven't given up on it.
No, we
That's
haven't.
good.
All right, because I'm going to
You
keep asking.
keep asking.
about it. All right. One more time, RailFest dates, times, and highlights.
Well, this Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 6, and we have train rides, music performances, great food, a lot of fun family activities. So lots to do this weekend, all focused around railroading and the history of
Right.
Good
railroading.
luck, Deb.
there is
All
a-
aboard.
There is a fee for RailFest. Normally,
Yes.
the park is open free of charge. There is a fee, $10 for adults, $15 for a 2-day pass, yes?
Yes, and again, that's still cheaper than what it would have been if you had come
Right.
last year and bought the entrance. You're saving $2.
And you're going to have a lot of special events to entertain you. Debbie, thank you so much.
No, thanks for having
joining
me.
us. Glad to have you. We'll see you again next time, and by then we'll be riding that little train.
Hopefully.
I'm certain. Rusty, thank
And
you
we'll
so
see you on
much.
Labor Day, Deb.
Mark, thanks for keeping
Thanks,
us in
Mark.
focus. I'm David DeCosmo for ECTV Live. Until we see you again next week, here's hoping all your news is good.